Hello again, YouTube. My name is Bree, and in today's video, I did something I shouldn't do and bought more art supplies. So, I figured I'd start with an unboxing, and I definitely want to do a painting. I personally don't like when people just do unboxing and show off stuff or unboxing and swatches because I like to see how things work together. So yeah, we're actually going to skip the swatching this time and go straight into, I do show off the swatches, but I don't film it, so we'll skip past that one. So yeah, in today's video, as you can see in the thumbnail and title, I'm sure, I haven't made those yet. I got some paint from Jackson's, and it is the new Schmincke Naturals. I just couldn't help myself, and I talked about this before. I love my Schmincke paints, and you know I have no self-control, so when I saw those, I immediately had to get them. This was my brilliant attempt of, I'll just take this out here, and then I push the box back and shut off my address, so don't mind the censor bar. But yeah, so I got the 2 packs, so 10 tubes of paint. I'm just spoiling it because I take forever to unbox. And that Meeden palette. So I don't try to shop at Amazon much anymore, but the Meeden tins have been pretty good for me. Typically, honestly, this one's a little messed up and I didn't realize it until I already started using it, so I'm stuck with it now. But yeah, so these Schmincke Natural paints, and I do speed this up once I get a little farther in, they're basically Schmincke's foray into doing paints with natural materials, kind of like historical pigments, and they're also vegan, so typically, Schmincke paints use oxgall in the binder, which is something bovine that helps with the flow of the watercolors. And these don't use the oxgall or honey, so they're a little different. So while I'm very familiar with Schmincke paints, I wasn't sure how these would perform because both the binder and the pigments are different than their usual stuff. So I did film putting some into pans. I did not fill the pans up terribly much because I know natural pigments sometimes dry up really hard and don't re-wet as well. So I definitely didn't want to fill up the pans all the way and then find out they re-wet terribly, but these actually work really great. So I'm in that realm. So I'm pretty happy about that. And this is where it's sped up. So yeah, I love the packaging. I think it's super cute. I love the way that's not just a solid color, it has a little texture. I always love Schmincke caps. They're so easy for me to remove. I have trouble with some brands. And yeah, I love all the information on the packaging. I did want to show this. Some of them do actually kind of like explode out of the tube just a little bit, not as badly as some brands, though Yellow Ochre is the worst, but none of these had binder separation issues. Once again, I was a little concerned because of the new binder, which I don't really know what it is. But yeah, so going through the paints, I got the 2 sets, both the naturals. One is I think it's like Mineral Earth, and the other, I didn't write it down and I don't remember. It was shown at the beginning. But the colors we have, and I'm going to tell you right up in advance, I'm going to mispronounce like literally everything, so I apologize for that in advance. But for the colors, we have Celadonite, which is PG23. This was a all these are pretty much historic pigments, but this one was cited as being used in paintings and frescoes since ancient times, and it was very popular in Roman frescoes. Both PG23s are very pale pigments, and I knew that going in, so I'm not really sure why I got that set because I don't really use those much. And yeah, so the other PG23 is the Caucasus Earth, which is a slightly more tan version. It kind of looks like a buff titanium, and it is the same pigment, PG23, but it's from the Caucasus region. So pretty much the same pigment from different places, might have different color variations because different minerals soaking in. So I'm not sure what makes one slightly more green than the other, one slightly more tan, but there we have it. Then we had the Yellow Ochre, which is NY43. Normally it would be PY43. But yeah, it's the natural version. So it's an iron oxide, apparently one of the oldest pigments, and it was used in prehistoric paintings. Then we have Violet, which I don't know how to pronounce that word. And it's an andesite rock. It's basically from lava flows. And it gets kind of a purple hue from iron and manganese oxide that's in, I guess, the lava rock. I'm really not too sure about this. Some of this information is from the website. And then the final one in that first box was the green slate, which is PBK 19, and it's made with genuine slate. It gets a little bit of green, and once again, from minerals that are in the slate. So it's cited epidote, and I can't read my own handwriting. So taking a break here, the swatches themselves, the larger sections I did while the paint was still wet, and I wanted to compare it to after it had dried in the pan, and then I swatched again below it because I wanted to see if we had a lot of mass tone variation or even granulation variation. And as you can see, it re-wet pretty well. I did not spray things in advance, so I was pretty happy with that. I didn't fill up the pans again before this video because I didn't want to have wet paint. And yeah, I decided to repaint this guy essentially. So that's what I'm just pointing out there, and not use the sketchbook because it is falling apart. So yeah, kind of lost my train of thought because my videos and my voiceover and done at different times. I forgot the timing, but that's okay. So the other colors, the more colorful set, that's really based more on natural pigments. The first one is Curcuma, which is NY3, which is apparently turmeric. And then this one, it said it's been used for 4,000 years as a dye, and it's especially popular in India, and used a lot in weddings. I know their weddings are very colorful, and so I guess that's the yellow. The next one is Madder Lake, which is NR3. That's Alizarin Crimson. So admittedly, that's what made me really want to try this, and I'll get back to that in just a second. So that's Madder Root. This pigment, I think they said famously was found in King Tut's tomb, so that dates back to at least 1300 BC. Could have been used before. The next one is Indigofera, NB1. This is the Indigofera plant, like the original genuine indigo color. And once again, really old pigment used in Roman paintings in the 1st century, but has been proven to be used up to like 3000 BC. So much, much older in painting and also dyeing. A lot of these are used to dye clothes. Dyer's Green is the next one. That's a combination of the Curcuma and the Indigofera. So those two pigments mixed together, kind of, yeah. I like the shade of green, but I hate when you have such a small section of paints and you get something that's mixed two of what you already have, and you could mix it yourself. I don't use green enough to need convenience mixes, but it's okay. It's okay. And then the last one is Style de Grand, and that's my I never took French, and it is NY13, and this is the one with the lowest light fastness rating of only 2 stars, which they say is satisfactory. I'm going to go ahead and call BS on these colors actually being light fast, and I'm going to test this at some point in the near future. I plan to make a light fastness test when I make my swatch cards, because I don't believe it. Like, Madder Lake, Alizarin Crimson, is famously fugitive, so I don't know if they're judging these on a different scale or if they did something else to try to improve light fastness, but seeing Madder Lake listed as a 4-star light fastness, I don't believe it, so we'll test that one. I live in Florida. I have south-facing windows, and the next 6 months are going to include all of the summer, so we'll get to the bottom of this. But yeah, Style de Grand is obtained by lacquering buckthorn berries, and they actually follow the recipe of Paul Schutzenberger from 1873, so they use an older recipe to replicate the exact formula. Apparently this one dates back to I think this says 16th century. Once again, I can't read my own handwriting, but it was really popular in the 19th century. So this was the newest of the historic pigments. And I think it's a really lovely green gold. So yeah. Now, why did I buy this? Well, once again, no self-control. It's Schmincke. It's new. I was excited. But I have been looking to buy Madder Lake for a while. I really wanted to try because Alizarin Crimson is one of my favorite pigments, I really wanted to try the original historic one with the natural dye. I also really have been looking to also get indigo at the same time, a genuine indigo, because I've never used it either. So those were two colors I've really been wanting, and I've been looking at a couple different brands and considering making a purchase, but then I'm like, how much do I get? Do I just want to get those two? And there's a couple other colors I've been looking at as well, so it was starting to escalate. When I saw this, it just seemed like the perfect little set of 5 paints, and then I had to buy the second box because, once again, no self-control. So that's how I ended up with these 10. I don't plan to expand this collection, even though there are a couple free pans in that tin. I just really wanted to try these out. They're definitely not paints anyone needs, but being kind of a little bit of a pigment nerd and really having interest in historic pigments, I definitely wanted to try them out. Because I'll probably move some of my A Gallo paints in here. I have Dragon Blood, which is another natural dye pigment, and Lapis Lazuli, so another historic pigment. I'll probably move those into this set and keep all of those together, and then pick out individual colors when I'm trying to add them to another piece instead of trying to use this in isolation. As for the paints themselves, you probably saw this in the swatches. They are very, very granulating. That's really common with more natural pigments and also mineral pigments. They tend to granulate more. So I was a little concerned here, much like with the Natural Earth set from Beam, that the larger particles in the paint that allowed it to granulate a lot would also cause it to lift easily. Now, I didn't show that in this video purely because I forgot, but I did rub my hands over the swatches like I did for the Beam paints when I did that video recently, and none of these pigments came up on my hands. And if you missed that video, I'm referencing specifically the Mother Earth palette from Beam Paints, and I do have an older set, so it may not be the same formula that's in use currently, because I know the formulas have changed a bit. Considering there's maple sap and mine was honey, but I'm getting off topic. But yeah, when I rub my hands over like the ochre and some of the other brown ones, the pigment came off all my hands, and yeah, it made it more difficult to work with in a painting when I do a lot of layers for that reason. This, I did not have that, so it might just be better worked into the binder, or just maybe not quite as large of particles. So that was definitely a plus. The other thing is it does layer. However, it does still lift easily. So I found it easier to layer than those Beam paints, but also still very easy to lift. Yeah, so it was definitely like this part of the painting, and I've already gotten way into it. I was really feeling it out. I had done the swatches, but I hadn't done any color mixing test or anything. I just dove straight into this painting because I don't plan ahead. I really should have done some color mixing first and some layering tests, but live and learn. Or don't learn, because I do the same thing all the time. But basically, I encountered some of those things here. First of all, I had some trouble with some color mixing because while color theory is great, sometimes you forget about things in practice. I had expected that the alizarin, the Madder Lake, and the Indigofera would make more of a purple, but it really came out a lot more brownish. It desaturated a lot more than I expected. And so I had trouble working with my normal skin tones. I just wasn't getting the same colors I normally work with. Oh, I'm losing my voice a little. Hold on. That's a noise I'm going to have to cut out. So, yeah, that's fine. And then just getting the skin colors, like even the non-purpley shadows I usually work with, I was having some difficulty there because the yellow was so strong, and I didn't have a nice warm red. I usually work with a warm red in my skin tones, and I didn't have that here. So I was struggling. He was looking really, really yellow in the beginning. I think in the long run, I made it work, but it helps to have a split primary, or rather, I like to do skin with a warm yellow, a warm red, cool red, and a blue. So I didn't have my usual setup. That's nothing against the paints. That's fully how I work. In terms of lifting, I already mentioned it did lift. So when you see me start to paint the rock that he's sitting on, I go over with a wash at some point and I basically wipe out the hair that overlays the rock. I wouldn't have expected to happen, but it happened and I adjusted. So it does lift really easily with a lot of water. So the pigment, while it doesn't come up with your hand if you're rubbing on the paper, it does still reactivate because that larger particle size. I wouldn't say this feels like wash by any stretch, that it's not quite at that level, but it definitely still reactivates pretty easily. At the same time, I was able to do my usual layering. I more struggled here with the colors than the paint. To be real clear, like I created my own challenges for myself with the color selection. So yeah, I don't want to sound too critical of the paint itself. I think the paint, for what it is, it works really well, but it's definitely not something that works for me in my normal way. I'm not explaining this well at all. So yeah, for starters, all of these paints, almost all of them except for the Style de Grand, are extremely granulating, and you don't need to paint a whole figure with heavily granulating colors. At least, I mean, you can if you want, but I usually don't. So that factors in. And then, yeah, just the ability to reactivate. Like, I went pretty heavy with the hair on pigments because I wanted it to be darker. And because of that, it had a more dense pigment ratio. When I put the water over it, it just wiped it out. So yeah, definitely live and learn moment. So yeah, otherwise, this character was just a random character I came up with when I tried the A Gallo paints. I showed the original in the beginning, and for some reason when I got these paints, I wanted to paint him again. I think my brain was associating the A Gallo having used a lot of natural minerals and very heavily granulating with this character. I don't think I said that right. I'm getting easily distracted by things around me. I think the cat's making noises. But yeah, so when I got more mineral paints and more granulating paints, I was like, let's just repaint this guy. And seeing them side by side really throws me off, and it's purely the colors. Like the A Gallo one, it came out a lot cooler, and this one came out a lot warmer simply because of the colors in play. And there it is, the hair it's gone. So yeah, it was that easy to go over it and lose that much. But later, I mean, like, I went over the skin multiple times and I didn't always lose paint, so it's just I had to be more careful moving forward. I did not plan how I was going to do the fabric folds or the rock much at all, and I was just trying to paint skin in different colors with granulating pigments. So I went into this part like completely not prepared to paint it, and I wish I had thought about the rock a bit more. I also had plans to do more of a background, or I should say I wanted to do a background but didn't plan how I wanted to do it. And once I realized how easily the pigments lifted in terms of the hair over the rock, I became more tentative. So I did a really simple patchy sky. I didn't want to use too much blue because I didn't want a really granulating sky, so I tried to do something fainter and it came out really desaturated. I guess that's one thing I haven't mentioned, being that these are natural pigments, they aren't as saturated as more modern synthetic paints. I think being natural earth pigments, it's kind of advertised as being intentionally less saturated. However, the yellows blew me away. They're gorgeous. Like, I was really surprised by the yellow ochre and the curcuma both. I really don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly at all, and I feel bad about it. I did try to incorporate each color at least once in this painting, but I didn't really give them all an opportunity to shine. Honestly, I'm not really sure how to make those PG23 pigments shine. I use them both in the rock, but they're just so faint. So I'm going to have to do some research and figure out how those are traditionally used. If it was just like maybe glazing pigments or used in very specific scenarios, I'm not really sure. At this point, I'm realizing because of the hair and the mix there's too much brown in the shadow, so I need to make the rock more brown. This is all just like me flailing. It doesn't look as flaily in sped up footage, but yeah, I had a moment of realizing I have no idea what I'm doing here. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, for what this is, for using new paints, for not knowing what I was doing going in or how they would mix or how they would layer or basically anything about them, I'm pretty happy with the end result here for the painting. I'm also quite happy with these paints. Like I said, I don't plan to use them in isolation. It's not a palette I'm going to pull out just to use to paint like characters. I could see trying to use them more for environments because the textures and the more natural colors would probably make more sense painting a subdued environment piece than painting a person. But I don't know. I just decided to try my normal thing and see how it would work. But generally, I think I'm looking forward to taking some of these in isolation, not in combination with another palette, and not trying to use them all together. But yeah, I mean, they're very much advertised as can be used with watercolor or gouache. I don't think they're meant to be used as just their own standalone thing, but that's okay. Had to try them out like that. But yeah, so that's about all. I'm doing this voiceover in one shot, which is why it's so scattered. I'm like, it's getting late. I just want it to be done with. I'm sorry. So this was not as organized as I intended it to be, but I hope you liked seeing these paints in action. I know I have seen them come up on my feed a couple times on YouTube, and so far it's pretty much just been unboxing and swatching. So I didn't get a chance to see anyone else using them in a full piece. So I hope that if you had been curious, that this was helpful to you, despite my incoherent voiceover. And yeah, I don't think these paints are a necessary purchase at all. If you are new to watercolor, definitely don't start with these. They are not traditional watercolors. It's not the traditional watercolor experience. But if you're a pigment nerd and you want to try them out, I think they're fun. They're different. They definitely have a different feel to them. And they have really beautiful texture. So if you just want to play with some of the granulation, they definitely fit the bill there. But yeah, otherwise, they are quite pricey at this point in time. I think individually the tubes go for about $17 for a 15 milliliter tube, which is kind of nuts. The sets, you get a little bit of a discount, but then you have less control over which ones you have. And yeah, I don't plan to be buying any more of them, so this was a one-time thing. And I'll see how I'll use them in the future. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you're doing well and taking care of yourselves. Once again, don't just buy paint because some random person on the internet is using the paint. Buy the paint if you have the disposable income and they are of interest to you. Because yeah, I feel bad every time I feel I might have motivated someone to buy something they don't need. These are very, very different. So yeah, that was a terrible closing. Sorry about that. But yeah, here's the tape peel. I said tape peel. I very consciously said that because I've been calling it a paint peel for the last 3 videos, and that's not the right word. And that's all I have for this video. So take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you in a couple weeks with a new video. Don't know what it's going to be, but we'll find out. Until then, have a good one. Bye.